Hey guys, JC Rangel here. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the different business models that exist in the life insurance and financial services industry, especially for those of you that are interested in building a team, creating leverage, and building a long-term business. Let's dive into it. Most people don't realize that there are different ways to build a career in this industry, and each model comes with its advantages and disadvantages. Now, today I'm going to cover the three most common models. The traditional team building model, all those three-letter word companies and the company that rhymes with America. I'm going to cover the IMO model. I'm also going to cover the captive agent model as well. I'm going to explain how each one of them works, where each one of them shines, but I'm also going to explain where each one of them falls short. But that's not all. I'm also going to introduce you to what I call the fourth model, what we call the Tri-Brid Model. You see, this is a new model that takes all of the strengths of the three models while eliminating a lot of their biggest weaknesses. And in my opinion, the Tri-Brid model represents where the industry is headed and why so many agents, agency owners, and team builders are making the switch. By the end of this video, you're going to have a clear understanding for how each one of the models works, and you're going to be able to decide which one best fits your goals. You see, whether you're looking to simply sell insurance or build a small agency or build a huge sales organization, you're going to understand that a little bit better. So let's jump in. So the first one I want to talk about is the traditional team building model. Many of these companies start their agents at contract levels of 25 to 35% and often cap their agents somewhere around the neighborhood of 80 to 90%. Now, in my opinion, that's simply too low for 2026 standards. Additionally, in most of these organizations, the only way to significantly increase your contract is by building a team and recruiting. Personal production alone is not enough to help you reach those higher contract levels. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a recruiter and I'm a team builder. As a matter of fact, for 25 years, I come from the network marketing industry, building organizations, developing leaders. However, I simply do not subscribe to the business model that starts people at 30% contracts. And then additionally, they exhaust their entire war market and then it tell them, hey, listen, there's upward mobility here, when in reality, that upward mobility remains out of reach for 95% of people. I also don't subscribe to the only way to get promoted and to move up is to recruit your way up. Now, as a result of that, these companies simply do not attract big personal producers because top personal producers, guess what they want to do? They want to focus on selling policies, serving clients, and writing business. So these businesses simply don't attract them because they don't want to recruit. Top producers don't want to build a team. They just want to sell policies. And another reason why they don't attract top producers is because the product training is just about non-existent. There's very little of that. There's so much of a focus on simply, hey, recruit people to the opportunity. Once they're in the opportunity, you do self-consumption, right? Internal consumption. We sell them a policy, which by the way, I'm all for that. Everybody should have a policy. I believe that you should be a product of the product. I call it your financial independence plan. However, because it's mainly focused on recruit, sell to them. Sometimes you've got people in these companies that have been there for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years or more, and they don't even know how to structure a proper IUL. They don't know how to structure a proper policy for a client. The training is very, very lacking on the product side. That's another reason why big producers are not attracted to the team building model. Now ask yourself this question. Do you think that big personal producers value good training? Of course they do. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally want to attract big personal producers. I want to have men and women that are writing 10,000 AP per month, 20,000, 30, 40, 50,000 AP per month. Why? Because they've got a healthy, strong contract. They've got the training. They've got the support. What if I've got 50, 100 of them in my organization that I override? With the traditional team building model, you do not attract those people to the traditional team building models that start their people off at 25, 30% contracts. And the average big producer is on a 50 to 60% contract. They're not going to go there. The other models I'm going to cover here shortly attract these people significantly more for the reasons I just talked about right now. Now, another limitation is that many of these companies simply do not have a strong lead generation system. Their lead generation system is to simply focus on warm market recruiting, referrals, family, friends, and personal contacts. Now, don't get me wrong. Once again, I'm not saying that lead only model is the only answer. I don't believe that either. In fact, referrals are some of the best and the stickiest business that you can get. Learning how to generate referrals and building relationships, creating trust in your community is extremely important. My point is simply that in today's market, agents should have access to both. They should know how to generate referrals. They should know how to build a warm market. They should know how to have access to proven lead generation systems that allow them to scale beyond the people they already know. Now, in my opinion, there are two reasons why these team building companies do not use leads. Number one, those tiny 25, 30%, 40% contracts that the majority of their agents are on, you simply cannot afford to buy leads. Leads cost money, right? And you can't afford to pay for those leads. That's why you see the IMO models that pay people significantly higher contracts. They've got people on leads all day because the contract they have, they're able to make enough money to buy those leads. Reason number two is that they have a culture that simply hasn't evolved since the 80s. All of those companies, the three-letter companies and the one that rhymes with America, they have the philosophies of the A.O. Williams days. Now, as great as A.O. Williams was, and as great as that system was and is, there's a lot of benefits to that system. It is not very relevant today. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't evolve. The bottom line is this, that it is an outdated approach for 2026. You see, for me, it is very apparent that in 2026, agencies and IMOs that fail to embrace lead generation, higher starting contracts for new agents, online marketing, advertising, scalable recruiting systems, if you fail to adapt that in 2026, you run the risk of being left behind the same way that BlackBerry got left behind when the smartphone market evolved. Now let's talk about the opposite side of the spectrum, the IMO model. This is the high contract but low override or no override model. Okay, and I'm going to break down how that works. This is how many IMOs are set up. Usually you've got less support, but you've got higher contracts and a kind of go get 'em tiger type of attitude. Here's the deal though. It makes sense. If they're making a very small override on you, they're not really going to exactly be investing a whole lot of time into you because they're making a very small override. This is a model where agents receive a higher, a more aggressive contract, and they spend their days buying leads and making calls for 8 to 12 hours per day. Seriously, that's not an exaggeration. They're setting up appointments, they're selling policies, and I call this the field for life model. Here's a silver lining. 1 to 2% of people in that model are running modern day sweatshops, right? A modern day slave runner. Why? Because they don't really focus on selling leads. They focus on selling the dream. Hey, come work for our agency. We'll give you a high contract. Let me point out at 3% of the stories that are successful stories, because 95% are not cutting it with the leads. So they sell them on, hey, put $5,000 worth of leads on your credit card. Call these leads for 8 to 12 hours a day. Listen, at the end of the day, if you're calling leads for that long, you're gonna trip on a sale, right? But nobody advertises the losses. So you see the success stories. Now, are there people making money with that model? Sure there are. Are there people losing money with that model? Even more so. Now, in fairness, there are people making money with that model. As a matter of fact, a lot of money with that model. I don't think people realize what a small percentage of people that really is, but nevertheless, there's people making money with that model. Now, the challenge with that model is that it has the red line type of model, the red line compensation plan rather. This also exists in the solar industry. For example, let's say I'm an agent on a 100% contract. I don't necessarily want you reaching my contract level because if you do, my income will be either reduced or more than likely completely eliminated if you catch me. Remember this, comp plan drives behavior. The compensation structure will very often determine the culture of the company. Now, sure, you could earn a very high contract level, but your team members will never be allowed to earn exactly what you earn. Basically, it is not an equal opportunity. Here's what it really is. It's a who do you know at the top type of opportunity. Let's say, for example, I'm on a 100% contract and you brought me in and you are on a 110% contract. The guy that brought you in is on a 120% contract, and so on. I will not get promoted unless one of you dies or quits. Seriously. Eventually, I'm going to be looking for another team, a leader who's on a 140% contract. And I'm going to ask him to personally sponsor me so I can go from 100% contract to 130% contract. And by the way, this happens all the time. It happens all the time. Once again, comp plan drives behavior. This is the red line model comp plan. It's a very old compensation plan. Now, to be fair, these companies, one of them in particular, one of them, the most popular one out there in the IMO model, I met with the owner of the company in Beverly Hills. He was in town, in Beverly Hills, and they invited me to meet with him. I was a little bit reluctant, but I said, hey, the guy's really sharp. I could learn something from him. Why not? Let's go meet with him. So I meet with him and I ask him this question. I say, here's the deal. So-and-so is on a 145% contract. He's eating up the whole contract. When I get to his level, is there even a path for me to get to his level? He says, yeah, there's a path. Great. When I get to his level, what happens to his override? Well, you know what? Let me connect you with somebody else that's going to explain those details. But you will earn a bonus. I said, great. What percentage is that bonus? Did not give me. I asked the question like 2-3 times. He would not give me the bonus. Later on, I found out you could earn up to 1% bonus override on that override. So let's say he's on 145 and I get to 145. Okay, great. Now he's earning up to 1%. So you start at, I think it's 0.25%, 0.5%, eventually get up to 1%. But let me ask you this. Why would you promote me to the same contract level you are on when you were previously making 10%, 15%, 20%? Why in the world would you promote me to your contract level to possibly make a 1% override? Where's the motivation in that? As a matter of fact, the motivation is to keep me down, not to get me there. Let me tell you what solves this. Generational bonuses. There's a better way to do comp plans, and I'm going to break that down later in this video. As a matter of fact, let's break them down now. Generational bonuses or generational overrides. You see, in my opinion, true agency builders need generational overrides, and 99% of IMOs simply do not offer this. For example, at my agency, you could go all the way to 130% contract off your personal contract, off your personal sales, okay? But the overrides pay as high as 158%. So let me give you an example. Let's say that my rank is executive director and I'm on 120% contract, okay? Now let's say that I bring you on board and you also become an executive director and you also reach the same 120% contract. Guess what? I still earn a 14% first generation override on all the sales you and your organization make. Okay. So 14%, I could earn up to 20% overrides on you and your entire organization with bonuses, which think about that. We're both at the same contract level, but I'm still rewarded for helping develop and promote another leader. And that's just the first generation. Guess what? There are 7 generations of overrides available. Another challenge I see many of these high contract organizations in the IMO model is the culture, right? One company in particular comes to mind. In some of these companies, the entire strategy is simple. Smile and dial 8, 10, even 12 hours per day. And yes, once again, like I mentioned earlier, there are people making money. Of course they are. But once again, when you have people on the phones that many hours, they're going to run into some sales. The truth is that the lead vendors are the same for everyone. We all have access to the leads. At our agency, we use leads too, but we also focus on building agencies. We teach people how to develop leaders, how to build teams, how to create a long-term income so they're not forced to personally sell forever. Now, we absolutely love and support personal production, of course. That's the core of the business. You should personally produce. But here's the deal. We have the leads, we have the training, we have the systems. But I believe that balance matters because eventually burnout happens. Burnout is real. Think about it. The average insurance agent in the most popular IMO right now, the most popular, lead calling IMO right now, the average agent is 27 years old. Now, why is that? Because many of these agents, by the time they get to their late 20s or their early 30s, guess what? They're burnt out. That constant grind of chasing the next sale, of smiling and dialing, on sitting on a chair and just making phone calls. And the guys that are running the office, unfortunately to them, it's a turn and burn model. Let's put them in there. Hopefully they last 6 months. Hopefully they last 2 years. But guess what? We're going to keep running the Indeed ads. We're going to keep filling these seats. When people burn out, we're just going to replace them with new ones. Now, here's the deal. Kudos to them. They found a business model. They're persuasive. They know how to recruit and sell the vision. But the average agent, guess what? They're going to burn out. So selling is great. Okay. I love sales. The only problem that I see is this. There's nothing wrong with selling, but there is something wrong with not having an exit plan from selling all day long. Nobody wants to sell the rest of their life. Now, the next one that I'm going to mention is the number one reason why the traditional IMO model is not a good fit for somebody who wants to build a huge organization nationwide. Let's dive into that reason. Here's reason number one. You have to get your non-resident license in every single state that you want to override in. In case you are wondering, it costs about close to $5,000 to get your non-resident license for all states in America. Remember, you have a team in California, Arizona, Florida, and if you don't have your non-resident license for that particular state and your team is writing business, you do not override that sale. Okay? Now, additionally, you also have to be appointed to every carrier that your team is using to write business with. Imagine this. If I want to build a huge organization, I need to get appointed to every state and pay a fee for every single one of these states. Then in addition to that, I have to make sure that I'm onboarded with every single carrier that my team chooses to use and write business with. Now, if I don't, I will miss out on those overrides forever. That's 50 states and 20 to 50 carriers. Oh, and by the way, all of your team members have to do the exact same thing. See, there's one word that describes how to build a big organization. Duplication. That, what I just mentioned to you, got to be appointed to every state and be appointed to every carrier. That is not duplicatable. Okay, now to wrap up with the IMO model, let's finish with the elephant in the room. What happens if you decide to leave? Okay, well, in many organizations, one in particular comes to mind. You are held captive for 6 months and even as long as 2 years. You will not be released from Transamerica, from Americal, from Corebridge, from whatever carrier you're using. Doesn't matter. These companies, once again, one in particular, if you want to leave, they say, fine, go ahead and leave. But guess what? You're not going to be able to get appointed to these carriers until minimum 6 months from now. We see this all the time. I don't think that's right. Now, it's one thing if you owe money, if you've got chargebacks or whatever the case may be, or you did something wrong. But if you just want to leave, they hold you captive. I just think that's just plain shady. Okay, so now let's talk about the captive model. Now, this one's pretty simple, so I won't spend a lot of time on this one. See, in a captive model, you work for one company and you sell that one company's products. Now, to be fair, many captive companies offer excellent training, strong brand recognition, a good support system. And for some people, especially those people who value structure, stability, that can be very attractive. Now, the trade-off is that the commissions are typically a lot lower. There's very limited upward mobility, and you generally are operating within the traditional corporate structure. In most cases, I would say, you don't own your book of business. The company owns the client relationships. If you leave, your clients are staying with the company. If you leave, the company keeps your clients. The company keeps and owns your book of business. It's more of a sales job than a business ownership opportunity. Now, for those people looking to build an agency, create leverage, and truly own their business, the captive model is usually the least attractive option of the three. All right. So we finally get to the hybrid model, or in this case, the Tri-Brid model. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the best of all worlds, and I'm going to prove it to you. So first, let's talk about compensation. High compensation, high personal contracts. Our agents get started between 70 and 130% personal contract. On your personal production, you could earn as high as 130%. Okay. Now the total comp plan payout is up to 158% when you include overrides and generational overrides and bonuses. And I'm going to break that down. Now, despite being a very strong team building organization, We do not dare start our new agents off at 25 to 30% contracts. Our brand new licensed agent got licensed yesterday. Today, you are on a 70% contract day one. This is truly an equal opportunity. See, you'll never find yourself in a situation where you are trying to hold somebody back from getting promoted because you're afraid of losing their overrides. Now, why is that? Because of generational overrides, generational bonuses. I'll break that down a little bit further in this video. You see, we have a culture of team building, developing leaders, developing agencies, as well as selling to leads, a system and a training for those who want to sell leads that's available as well. See, we believe that agents should know how to serve families, write business, generate leads, build organizations, and develop leaders. You see, it's not one or the other here. It's both. For those people who want to focus on personal production, we have a lead program for you. We have the training, the systems, and the support. For those people who want to build an agency, we have the training, we have the support, the compensation structure that is specifically designed for builders. In fact, if you want to recruit an agency owner that's already on a 100% contract, 110%, even 120% contract, you can still recruit that agent over. We could honor their contract. And guess what? If they're on the same contract level that you're on, they're on 120, you're on 120, you still earn a 14% override on all of his sales, all of his organization sales, 14%. You can go all the way up to a 20% override on that first generation. And remember, there's 7 generations total. Think about that. That's a builder's dream. Most compensation plans break when people reach your level. Ours doesn't. You can help develop leaders, promote leaders, build agencies without sacrificing your income. And once again, that's just the first generation. There are 6 additional generations available beyond that for a total of 7 generations. Now, to me, that's what a true builder's compensation plan looks like. This isn't a model that's only built for producers. It's a model that's built for producers, leaders, and agency builders alike. Another thing I love about the Tri-Brid model is the true ownership. Not only do you own your book of business day one in writing, that's a given, by the way, owning your book of business, but you also own your agency day one. And there's a huge difference between those two things. You see, most people understand the value of owning their book of business. Okay. Now, if you build a client base over the years, you should absolutely own the relationships and the residual income that comes from that book of business. Again, that's a given. But what about the organization that you spent years building? What about the leaders that you've developed? The agents you recruited, the systems that you've created, and the overrides that you've generated by that organization? That's where many models fall short. In some companies, you may only receive overrides when you're active. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you own the agency that you've built. Those are two very different things. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you spent the next 10 or 20 years building your organization, and there's 100, 500, or even 1,000 licensed agents. That organization is generating an override income every single month. What happens if you retire? What happens if you become disabled? What happens if you pass away? Does that income continue to benefit your family? Does your spouse inherit? Do your children inherit it? In our business model, the answer is yes. Your family just inherited your book of business. They inherited your agency. They inherited the override streams generated by that organization that you spent years building. Think about that. Most people focus on building residual income from clients. That's great and all, but we're talking about building a residual income from an entire organization. So you see, that's real ownership. That's true business. That's something that you can build, grow, protect, and ultimately pass on to the next generation. Because you see, in my opinion, if you're going to spend years building an agency, you should actually own the agency that you've built. Okay, now let's talk about variety. We offer all of the services that a client can need. See, another major advantage of the Tri-Brid model is a product variety. One of the biggest attractions in a traditional IMO model is the fact that they have access to the carriers, to many carriers, and the ability to find the right solutions for the particular clients. Just like some of the bigger IMOs, we are partnered with more than 60 carriers. Companies like Ethos, F&G, National Life Group, and Transamerica, to name a few. Now, whether your clients need term, living benefits, IULs, whole life, final expense, mortgage protection, or annuities, we have all of that under one roof. Now, what that does is that it gives our agents the flexibility to serve clients based on their needs rather than being limited to a single company's product line. In my opinion, that's a major advantage over the captive model, where you're often restricted to offering only the one company solutions, regardless of whether or not it's the best fit for the client. Lastly, let's go ahead and talk about training. See, one of the things that I'm most proud of is the training and the support and the system that we have in place for our agents. We offer trainings 5 days per week, led by 6- and 7-figure earners who are actively building businesses and serving clients on the field. You see, our trainings cover every major area of the business, including term insurance, final expense, IULs, whole life annuities, and much, much more. On the business building side, we provide training on closing sales, prospecting, recruiting, leadership development, team building, mindset, and agency growth. And for those who can't make the trainings live, guess what? We have a comprehensive online university that is filled with all of the training modules that you need to succeed. Everything that you miss in a live training is going to be in the university. All of the resources, the step-by-step systems that you need to access on your own schedule is available to you, once again, in our university. All right, guys, let's go ahead and recap here. Today, we covered the 3 primary business models that exist in the insurance and financial services industry: the traditional team building model, the IMO model, and the captive model. Then I introduce you to what we call the Tri-Brid model, which, in my opinion, the Tri-Brid model combines the best aspects of all 3, eliminating a lot of the limitations of all 3 as well. From the team building model, we offer the ability to build an agency, develop leaders, and create leverage. Also to earn powerful generational overrides. The difference is that we don't start people off at 25 or 30% contracts. Our agents start off at 70% contracts and can work their way up as high as 130% on personal contracts. By the way, they could do that without ever building a team. They can work their way all the way up to 130 without ever recruiting a soul. Now, we also believe that team builders should have access to modern recruiting and lead generation systems. Okay, you can build an agency, recruit agency owners, build nationwide, and still have the ability to sell through leads if that's what you choose to do. Bottom line is that this is the team building model updated for 2026. Now, from the IMO model, we attract many of the top producers because we offer strong contracts that they're accustomed to. But we also offer something that many of them are looking for, which is a better long-term path. A path that allows them to build leverage, develop leaders, and create income beyond their personal production. In other words, we don't have to spend the next 10 or 20 years on the field dialing leads every single day to maintain their income. There's a much bigger vision than that. And from the captive world, we offer the training, the support, and the structure that many agents are looking for. You see, we have trainings that are available throughout the week on everything that they need. Once again, term, final expense, whole life, IULs, annuities. We also provide training on sales, mindset, leadership development, team building, agency building, recruiting, and business ownership. So whether you are a producer, a leader, an agency owner, or just somebody looking to build a long-term business, we're designed for all of that. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the Tri-Brid model and the company that I'm partnered with, Experior Financial Group, click on the link on this video or in the description of this video. There, I'll break down the entire opportunity in detail. With that being said, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you at the top or from the top. Take care.